And the thing about the shop is like, yes, you can love comic books, but that's not enough to work for me. You need to love the hideout. Anybody can love. There are lots of people that love comic books. Loving comic books is not the stipulation. It's loving the shop, my shop, the hideout. You have to love the hideout like I love the hideout. So when I leave, I can trust you as a babysitter.
Hi, my name is Adam Freeman. This is Comic Industry Insiders, a weekly podcast where we talk to the people behind the scenes of the comics industry, which is great because most of those people are some of my favorite people in the world. And we are definitely talking to one of those today. Some people just make you happy when they walk in the room. And for me, that has always been my friend Glynnes. When Glynnes Speaks opened Comic Book Hideout in 2012, she was a breath of fresh air in the comics retail community that was just kind of beginning to come out of the doldrums of an economic crash. As an industry, retailers were just beginning to use the internet to sell and promote, but had no idea how to convey voice. In comes videos of Glynnes dancing and hyping her little hideout. Her energy was infectious and seemed boundless. As the hideout grew and spread through Fullerton, California, Glynnes did the same through the comics industry, quickly becoming a fixture at conventions and meetings. She seemed a star on the rise that was going to recharge us all. And then she stayed home. In the years since COVID, watchers of the hideout social media have watched Glynnes and her husband's family grow, and the staff of the hideout step forward to take the hype take that hype roll. Yeah, see, I didn't think through that line. Whatever, I'm going to keep that in. I'm keeping it in. But it seems that young mother Glynnes is starting to come out of that cave and tell us all whether or not she sees her shadow, and not a moment too soon. I could not be more excited to catch up with my old friend, Glynnes Speaks. Glynnes, I want to say at the top, thank you so much for getting a sitter. I know that's a big deal.
It is. I would only do it for you, Adam.
Oh, shucks. I want to believe that, though. I think you say that to everyone who calls you and asks you for a 2-hour interview. How you doing? How you been?
I'm doing so good. I've been so good. Honestly, everything you said is totally true. I've been hiding away in my own personal hideout from the hideout. I have 2 beautiful baby boys. Aww. I have a 10-month-old Shay. He is fresh, almost not yet a year, and he's almost walking. And he's in the other room with my sitter right now, hollering. And Tristan, my first son, just turned 3. And so I got pregnant in 2020, and oh man, COVID was crazy for everybody, but we really made the best of it at the hideout, and I made the best of it in my personal life. And so I think I kind of started stepping back. When I got pregnant, I instituted a bunch of new stuff for the shop, a bunch of protocols and a bunch of systems and rules and ways that people can do their job and know exactly what I want all of the time without me having to be there every day. So once Tristan was big enough that he was walking and wanting to touch all of the books everywhere, I was like, okay, it's no longer cool for me to work in my office with my baby. So, so I work mostly from home now. I'm in the shop a couple days a week, kind of when I need to be there willy-nilly. And I would not be able to do that if it wasn't for my incredible staff. Who, as you said, have stepped up and have been the crowd-pleasing favorites for Picks of the Week and the weekly What's Up and all the fun video stuff that we started, that I started doing way back when I first opened the hideout. So I'm eternally grateful for my boys at the shop. They are so good and they work so hard and they bring the energy that, is hard to is hard to compete with.
Well, you, I'm sure, are hard to compete with and raise that level. I know that I've had bosses that really raise me up because because they work harder than anybody in the room, and I have no doubt that that's what they're dealing with. And I do want to dig into everything you just said, but first, I'd like to start somewhere else, if you don't mind. Yeah. Will you tell me about Al Pruitt?
Al Pruitt is my dad. Al Pruitt's my dad. He's been a comic book a California comic book staple since I was like, I think he started selling comics when I was 6 years old.
Oh my
And
gosh.
we started at Frank and Sons
Oh yeah.
Collectibles and
In
started
LA.
doing, yeah, and we did the Shrine back when the Shrine
Oh
was a
yeah.
comic book show.
I remember the
And that
Shrine.
was, oh man, yeah, I was a little kid then. So me and my siblings, I'm the oldest of six. So my dad has six kids, two of which are teenagers currently. And I'm obviously long since that. But I started hanging out with my dad doing comic book shows when I was in elementary school. So we would do Frank and Sons Wednesdays and Saturdays, and we would do all of the California shows. So
Yeah.
back then, WonderCon was in San Francisco. We did WonderCon, and Wizard World was in LA
Yeah, I
back
remember.
before Kamikaze. We did the Shrine when that was going on for a little while, and we did Comic-Con back when it was still, you could still walk around and not have to smell everyone up close and personal. So yeah,
Sure.
my dad's been selling comics. He's never had a shop. My shop is not his shop. My shop is my shop.
Got it.
He's never had a store. He's only done his eBay store and then doing shows. But
Yeah.
he's done shows for forever, so everybody knows him. And that's how I got to meet everybody. It's be little boundless energy Glynnes at shows. I remember, all of the California local guys have seen me grow up because I was at every show all the time. When I was in college, I was running my dad's Frank and Sons booth because he was burnt out from it and didn't want to do it, and I had a car. So I was doing Frank's by myself for a long time. And then I told him that I wanted to open up my own store. I turned 25 and I was like, I got to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. And so I opened up the Hideout, and he was more than enthusiastic about it. He was really a stellar supporter, my number one cheerleader for the Hideout for
Yeah.
sure.
I
And
bet.
then since then, the Hideout has really grown into its whole own other entity. And it's like I'm putting my own baby off to college. The Hideout is, self-sufficient enough that I can, go, it comes home to do its laundry and get home cooked meals. And I make sure that I go in and keep the morale up and give out huggies and tell everybody how
Yeah.
much they mean to me. And, the boys keep the fires burning, and it's
You
going
know what I love
good.
about this is that most of the you're like my 25th or 26th interview so far, and usually I'll ask somebody a question and they get they kind of get moving, and then I say all right, and then next and then next I say one question and they're like I'm already three deep. You've already covered it all.
Well, just in case everyone needs to know more about
Yes.
Al, he's doing great. He
Yeah.
is. He had a spot inside the Hideout. We had we called it the secret Hideout, which was he was renting out the garage space from me, and
Okay.
we had him in there, and he had like a little shop. And my brother moved home from Georgia for a little while and was helping him, and they were doing their online stuff out of there.
Aw.
But since then, he has retired, and
Okay.
he's hanging out at home with his teenage kids and doing home improvements. And he's got his eBay shop. But this year is sadly the first year that my dad has not done San Diego Comic-Con since I was 6.
Oh my
So it
goodness.
is a whole new world
We're
to,
into like the retirement years. Like the
yeah,
baton is legitimately passed on,
he's
huh?
like actually legitimately retiring. So you can't
Was he
keep
doing anything else like during those years, or is it like has this been a hobby for him, or has he been a
just
full
been a
time
hobby.
dealer?
So
Okay,
no, it's been a hobby. He worked for Siemens Incorporated. They do like HVAC stuff. So he was a part of the team that did the heating and cooling systems at the new Star Wars land and at the Staples Center. And like he does like huge job. He was a project manager for Siemens. So he actually legitimately retired from his day job in when we started the Secret Hideout, and that was a couple of years ago. And then now he's slowly backing out of the comic book game. But you know what? If there's one thing that I can say about my dad is you can never get that guy to stop being in comics. Like he can be retired. He might not do Comic-Con because it's a lot of
yeah,
work, and lugging big long boxes is not his favorite thing to do now. but he will never be done with comic books.
So
So
this
don't
guy
worry.
is like an HVAC specialist doing these huge jobs, right? And it sounds to
Yep.
me like, I mean, those HVAC guys, they work for a living. He comes home to his 6 kids and then spends his free time lugging lawn boxes all over hell and gone, selling comics, and then runs his eBay store on top. I'm thinking
Yep.
I understand where this little Energizer bunny, Glynnes comes from. This totally
For
makes sense
sure.
now. I totally understand this. Wow. Well, okay. So so talk to me about those intervening years. Just so I mean, at 25 you opened the shop, which is
Yes.
remarkable, right?
And I
Open it
just
just
turned
straight out.
37. Oh. So
Oh.
the hideout is turning 12
So
in
you're so
November.
old,
So
37.
old.
My goodness. You're ready to retire yourself, I see.
Hey man,
Yes.
it's the clock is ticking on my retirement. Just, just you wait. See how early I can get out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so in the middle, well, the hideout's just been growing and growing and thriving, and I started doing events and things at the shop because I wanted to. When I built the store, I wanted it to be a hub for all the fun things that I wanted to do. I wanted to be a one-stop shop for like all of my favorite things. So I was in a band at the time, so we were doing live music all the time. I got connected into the Chamber of Commerce and the Rotary. And so I was doing an art, we had an art gallery. We still have an art gallery. So we do art walk. So then I was on the board for the art walk. And as you can tell, there's a little bit of a pattern. I like to do everything. So I was just I had my fingers in every single pie. We were doing live theater events. We were doing comedy shows. I was doing, we had crazy art showcases. We were doing signings and book releases, which every store does, but we were doing I was doing anything that I could possibly do to have fun for myself and my team and my customers, and
right.
B, get people to know about the shop. And so when COVID hit, it was like, the records stopped and everybody was just like, oh, well, I guess we can't do anything. And I was like, okay, well, that's cool. I could take a break and have a
How
breath
do you
of fresh
throw a
air.
party when nobody can come to the party? Right.
Exactly. So then I was like, okay, well, pivot. What do we do next? And we started doing live streams, and I was the comic book Vanna White, and we were doing comic book QVC right when that started.
Right.
And now that's a huge thing with Whatnot and all
Sure.
of the little apps that you can get on. And so COVID, as horrible of an event as it was and how detrimental it was for lots of different things, it was actually a really pivotal change in momentum for the hideout. I got rid of not got rid of, but most of my staff had to leave for various reasons. And so it was just me and Funky, who had up to that point been an intern. And he really stepped up and was like, okay, it's you and me, G. We got to keep the hideout alive. And we did great.
Wow.
We had a really awesome year through all of that nonsense. We came up with a bunch of cool new strategies. I took the time. We were closed for 3 months, closed. And so I took that time to redesign the inside of the store, and I got rid of a bunch of shelving and switched things up and gave the hideout a facelift, and which it totally needed at that time. And then since then, I called in the dream team, and we have not had a better staff than we have now at the hideout. It has just been killer. Everybody is so kind-hearted, and the whole spirit of the hideout, I'm sure, if anybody's ever heard me do an interview before, my motto at the hideout is everybody love everybody, and it's creating a space of inclusivity and family, as much as that can be a triggering word, finding your nerdy spot. And so the staff that I have now is above and beyond that. Everybody is so kind and loving and supportive of not only each other, but of the community. And I wouldn't be able to leave my shop in the hands of all of these men, I should say men. I call them my boys, but they're men. If they didn't have the same love for it that I have. And so with that,
how did you find them? How do you isolate out these men?
Well,
who have that?
Well, mostly I call them boys because they've been with me since they were boys. Nate, we have two Nates. We have Nate 8 and Nate 10. And so I call them number 8 and number 10, my favorite henchmen.
Okay.
And 8 started interning with me when he was in middle school. I think he was like 12. And so he's kind of grown up with the hideout, and it's been so fantastic to see him grow up and like be from a boy to a man. He's a man now. It's wild. And then like I came in the other day and he had a beard, and I was just like, oh my God, Nate, you have a beard. I remember when you were like, in your little pudgy phase.
Yeah. Yeah.
And 10 also came into the store as a customer for a long time before he interned with me. I have an intern process at the hideout, and it's a fun vetting process that helps to keep the people that want to be there and ditch the people that don't. And many other store owners have had lots to say about my intern process, but I will stick by it because it has only brought the most beneficial things to the hideout.
Well, it feels like there's a criticism of this. Do you mind talking about that? I've not heard about this intern process. So, I mean, I'm curious about the process. I'm curious to know how many interns you vet out, right? And I'm legitimately curious to know like what sort of feedback you've gotten.
So we
not
are
to get you to talk tales against yourself. I'm not asking you to get
it's
trouble.
Wonderful. I came up with this because of my childhood labor that I did for my dad for so many years.
Sure.
So as a kid, I was alphabetizing and lugging long boxes and refilling boxes and doing all the menial bagging and boarding, doing all that stuff for my dad, starting at a very young age. And as begrudging as it might have been for me as a little kid, it gave me so much wealth of knowledge from just touching comic books, like just looking at and touching millions of comic books. And so, and being in a place where I was like a little sponge, everyone assumes that if you own a store that you've read every book ever. And I'm sure you've gotten that a lot in your time,
yeah,
right?
Of course.
And the reality is
why I just refuse. Like for a while when I started freelancing, I would work comic shops every Wednesday, and I realized I just can't keep up anymore. I don't have the skills.
So hard. It's so hard, man. And time consuming. Like who has the time to fucking read all those comic books? But as being in the environment, I was just like a sponge, and I just soaked up all of this knowledge. And I felt like that was invaluable to being able to open a store and know everything that I knew, because I was just exposed to so much information. Right. And so we have a bunch of high schools that are right near us. And we've got Fullerton High School, Troy High School, and a couple others. But we have a deal with them as we are a part of the Troy Tech Mentorship Program, where I'm a mentor, and people can come from school and get school credit to do internships with my store. So we are part of their whole system of Troy Tech internship process.
Wow.
And it's really cool because the kids get school credit, and then once they age out of their school credit or they used all that up, then they get store credit, and they can work in the shop and just do all of the fun stuff that I used to do, right? Yeah. Clean the bathroom, sweep the floors. But then they also get to come with an internship project that they want, like something that they think will help make the hideout better. So sometimes I come up with the process, or sometimes they come up with the process. And sometimes, they suck and they're on their phones all day long, and I have to be like, why are you here? But very rarely, most of the time, everyone that signs up to do an internship at a comic book store really wants to be there. Yeah.
How many kids a year is this, you think, on average? I imagine it's probably got a moving number.
It's kind of got a good steady clip to it. Right now we have 2. One has been there since February, and she's done with her school internship, is now on store credit. And then another just started in June, and he'll be finishing up his like summer internship. And then we'll decide if we want to keep him on for store credit after that. Right. And sometimes they'll stay and they'll turn into employees, and sometimes they'll go and turn into customers, or sometimes they'll go and we'll never see them again. And that's the nature of everything, right?
Of course. Right. Yeah.
but it's really wonderful because all of these kids get this opportunity to see something unique, right? They get to be a comic book store is not a typical retail job. It's not a typical bookstore job. But they get to see, especially now that I'm more of a remote owner, like when I was there all the time, they just got to see me work. We would do these things called job shadows, which is exactly what it sounds like. They just shadow me and I do my job, and they come in and they watch me buy collections or, reorganize or give the team a task, right? And we'll do a big team meeting and I'll say, okay, we have this new project that we're going to do. And I need you to take all of this stuff and transform it into this stuff or whatever it is that we're working on. Right. And so it's cool because I'm a female business owner. And so I get a lot of interns that are young women in the comic book industry. And that's really neat. And I get to kind of show them that you really can do anything that you want to do as long as you want to do it. Which sounds really silly for 2024, but that we're still struggling to find our place. But yeah, it's a wonderful thing. And I think it helps me to know the community, and it helps me to give back. And it helps the community to know the hideout, right? Because without being saying this in a negative way, the comic book store is a glorified community center, right?
Right.
That's what we're there for. We're there to give people a safe space.
What's the negative way to say that?
Well, the hideout is a hideout. And sometimes people say, oh, I'm going to be at the hideout. And then they come and drop their bags and their jackets and then they leave. And I don't know where they go. But, just like you would do at a community center.
Pretty much. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay.
Teenagers are teenagers, no matter what year it is.
All right, we'll talk about the pipeline then. So it sounds to me like, out of this continual crop of prospects you get out of these high school kids, you get to see who is good and who isn't. You find, let's say you find somebody who's just like a rock star, right? And they really pick it up. Do you find a place for them? Do you put them in a list? Or what's the story there?
So having a spot at the hideout is a coveted position. I have a very small staff. There's only 5 of us, or 5 of them and me, so 6. Yeah. And you don't have to be in high school to do an internship. And you have to do an internship if you're going to be an employee. You got to do some time on X Factor if you want to be on the X-Men. You know what I mean? Like
I love on this show I've talked to so many retailers, and the thing they struggle with the most is finding people who understand like the mission of their store and their vision and the culture fit. And you seem to have created a filter for that in which you don't really have to pay people all that much, which is fascinating.
Which is why I get shit for it from other retailers.
I have no doubt. No doubt they do give you shit, but yeah.
But in 12 years, it's worked, and it's really helped me find people that love to be there. And the thing about the shop is like, yes, you can love comic books, but that's not enough to work for me. You need to love the hideout.
Right.
Anybody can love. There are lots of people that love comic books. Loving comic books is not the stipulation. It's loving the shop, my shop, the hideout. You have to love the hideout like I love the hideout. So when I leave, I can trust you as a babysitter.
Wow. Man, you're blowing my mind a little bit. That's no, I love that as a philosophy though. Is it this is your baby, and they are babysitting when you're gone. That's it does make total sense. Does this?
And that's how I've treated it since the beginning, right? Because I used to work 14-hour days and be there all the time. And if anyone was there, they needed to be able to answer questions like I would answer questions, and, talk to people with kindness like I would talk to them, and make sure people are greeted and know that they are like valued and alive and there. We see your presence. You're not like a ghost coming in the door, and it seems really simple for literally anyone in any other retail ever. But for comic book stores, somehow they just miss that shit.
Sometimes,
So it's important for them to be able to have that, and that I think it comes from love. Everyone on my staff has a specific thing that they're really good at, and so me being able to give them.
Look at that beautiful Ken doll that just walked past. That's
Exactly.
incredible.
That is my Ken doll. He's Ken enough. I'm doing
go to the kitchen, dude.
Yeah,
Seriously, go get a snack. We're good.
It'll get we can need those views.
We need to get those clicks. Come on. Nobody wants to see me with my shirt off. We could just take that off. It could be the background. It's totally fine. All right. Well, we can just move on because I don't remember what we were talking about either.
I'm sure you have more questions for me.
I do, actually. I do. And I didn't even know we were going to go down that road, but that's, I do genuinely like that both as a business owner who's struggled with, getting people to understand my vision and embrace it. And just in general, knowing how comic shop culture is, it is about institutional knowledge, right? And so how do you find people who are willing to absorb that institutional knowledge to a point where they're useful? And they can be paid because most of us don't have huge salary budgets. It totally makes sense.
And honestly, salary, my budget right now, to be very frank, because this is for industry professionals.
Yes, please.
My staff is my highest expense, 100%. What I pay in my staff is by far and away the most expensive thing that I have to do on a monthly budget.
So more than rent, more than cost of goods sold,
more than comics, more than everything is how much I pay my staff.
Wow.
And for me, that's essential to creating the work environment that I want to get the results for everything else. So by making sure that my staff is taken care of, making sure that they feel loved, they feel a part of the family, making sure that they know that if they need anything, that I'm there for them, that's essential. Because like a good babysitter, you need to make sure that they feel like they are, a priority. And so I make them a priority.
That's so good. I'm going to start asking babysitters to come work for free for a while so that I can see if they can get along with my kid.
That's how they did it for me. I don't know. It's different now. When I was a kid, we didn't have phones, So you had a house phone, but we didn't have cell phones. So when I was a kid, you're either going to, if you want to hang out with your dad, you got to go wherever your dad goes. And if you're going to, that was like how my dad bonded with us. He was at work all the time. And so anytime that he wasn't at work, we were like so eager for his attention that, we would just do, oh, Dad, what are you doing? Well, I'm sorting through this box of garbage that I got from the swap meet. Pick out anything that says Superman, Spider-Man, or X-Men. Like, okay.
I can do that. That's true because I did, I think part of the reason why I've never really succeeded anywhere working for anybody else or in the way I wanted to, I have always needed to be an entrepreneur was because my dad, he took me along on his, his routes to go to the restaurants that he was running, so there's just something about that. You want to be with your parents and by nature, you just absorb it. And so you've essentially created that sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Virtual parenting, almost like you've essentially adopted them pre staff,
and that's why they call me Mama G.
Mama G. I'm writing Mama G down. Well, all right. So let's talk about the shop itself. So you opened in 2012, and this coincides when we launched Valiant, and I was so active with retailers, and why we got to know each other during those wonderful years where you were just like, this is how things should go.
Baby business owner, yeah.
Oh my gosh,
I learned so much, so much, but mostly from working a lot.
Yeah. Well, you have to, right? It's about iterating, and that's part of why
trial and error.
You do,
and, figuring it out. I worked at Tower Records, and I worked as a manager at Blockbuster Video, and that was like the training ground that I had to go open my own retail store.
I mean, you're obviously qualified. Go.
Yeah.
Where does that money come from to get you? I mean, you have to start. I mean, I'm sure you were probably on a shoestring.
I started the Hideout. I was working 3 jobs pretty much since college. I'll just, one after another. And I'm always working a ton of different jobs. I was radio DJ I was doing my college radio as the music director for my college radio station. I worked as waitresses and bartenders at like several different places. I worked at a movie theater, the Art Movie Theater in Long Beach. I did private tutoring and babysitting, and I worked at Boys and Girls Club. I worked at a private Korean academy as a teacher and instructor, and I wrote lesson plans for them. I do not speak Korean. I was one of 2 people at the entire school that did not speak Korean.
Okay.
I mean, I can say just enough to make you think that I know what you're talking about, and also that I'm going to tell your mom, and you need to close your mouth. That's what I can say in Korean. Which did not do me any good when I went to Seoul with the Rotary in 2016. No?
By the way,
not helpful at all.
So you joined the Rotary. Are you what is the age differential between you and the next youngest person in the Rotary? It's got to be decades, right?
So I joined the Rotary. So funny thing, I joined so many things when I first opened the business because I was like, I need to network and I need to get in there and I need mentorship. Yeah. Like what I really needed was mentorship. I was like, I need somebody that knows something about anything that's not comic books that can help me do this thing right.
Like comic books and HVAC. I got that down. I know exactly where the Freon goes.
Well, and my mom, she's a person too. She always gets mad when I do interviews because she's like, you never talk about me. You only talk about your dad. I'm like, Mom, A, you don't know shit about comic books. and B, not everyone needs to know that my mother is a therapist and I bring all of the qualities of a therapist to my work to do the best job that I can do. Oh, wait. Maybe they do. But anyways, this is my mom shout out. She's a therapist. She runs her own private practice and is a very helpful person in her own right.
Yes.
But I joined the Rotary because I needed mentorship, and I was by far, probably by like 30 years younger than everybody. And so in joining the Rotary, they were just over the moon with my energy and my enthusiasm. They were just like, this is our new spokesperson. She is great. We need her to do everything. So I was doing a ton of stuff for the Rotary, like very early on. So much so that I actually created with a team of other people around my same age, most of them kids of Rotarians. We created a thing called Ripen, which is, like a banana, ripen that banana, right? Which was the Rotary Young Professionals Entrepreneur Network.
Right.
And so I created a whole new Rotary club for young professionals, because Ripen, they have like a high school level, and then they have old people, and they have like nothing in between. Right. And so I really enjoy like the foundational stuff for Rotary. It's all about like community and giving back and being a good person. And I really like that. They're non-denominational, which really fits with me. And so it's not like you don't have to be in church to do good stuff for the community. And that was really important to me. And so I created this club, and I was like the club president of this Ripen club. And then as soon as I wasn't the club president, it just completely devolved into nothing. And it turns out the reason why they don't have anybody in that demographic is because they're all doing shit. They're all like running their own businesses and running their companies and like starting families. And so the jump between high school and being old is like, you don't have bandwidth for community service as much, right? Because you're actually out there doing whatever it is for your career or for your family or whatever. And so it was really difficult for me to kind of get together everyone every week to have these meetings because everyone was super duper busy. And now once I got pregnant with Tristan, I was like up to my ears in extracurricular activities on top of the shop. And so I had to step back from the Rotary and from the Chamber of Commerce and from, a couple boards that I was on. And it has been so wonderful to not have my schedule completely filled up with everything. And now it's just filled up with toddlers, which is a whole different kind of busy.
During the period though, that and maybe even after that, how many times has the Comic Book Hideout been named best comic shop in Orange County?
So we won for OC Weekly. I think it was 9 years we won every year, or we're in the, because there's two choices. There's like People's Choice and the Editor's Choice. We were either one or the other of those up until the OC Weekly stopped running, which is it's no longer around
So you had a
anymore.
perfect score for the
So
OC
we had a
Weekly.
perfect score on the OC Weekly. And then we also won for 2 years from the OC Register. And now I don't know that they do that anymore either. And then we won for CBS Local 1 year.
Okay.
And then in 2022, we got Best Small Business of the Year for our district from the California State Senate. And the senator dubbed the Comic Book Hideout a community partner, so much so that we got Best Business of the Year. And they flew me up to Sacramento, and they gave me a big fuck off plaque. And I got to do a little speech with the senator and all the people, and that was really cool. And
you
a
wore
funny
that
story,
plaque around a chain like Flavor Flav.
It's literally as big as myself. The funny thing about that is they kept calling the shop, and I thought it was spam. And so I kept like dodging their calls, and they're like, hi, we'd like to speak to Glynnes, is the owner there. We have something really important from the California State Senate. She's won this award. And I'm like, sure. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I won what? Like, how much money do you need? Because I don't need to participate in that. Like, I'm not giving to the police.
You want to put me on your who's who list. Oh, that's great. Oh, for $500. Okay, thank you. Right.
And then they sent me an email, and they're like, for reals, you won. Like, it's a thing. Please contact us. We want you to go to Sacramento and get this award. And I was just like, oh, this is a real thing that they give out, like Best Business of the Year for the state. Okay, cool. Level up, guys. I brought it to my employees, and they were just like, what? It's like, it's a real thing. They do it. It's, look it up. So we have some accolades. Yeah.
You've had some accolades. All right. Now I want to counter that with, I went through and was looking at some of the things that you've done, and during the Glynnes is going to have everything that she wants to do in the shop happen in the shop years, including having a music studio, apparently.
So and the music studio is still running.
Still running.
By the way. Yes.
Okay. Great.
And I built that for my best friend, who is a music instructor. She and her husband teach music lessons. So I built the music studio for her to teach music lessons out of. And now she just recently, in the last year, got hired at a really fancy private school. And so she's their whole music director for the fancy private school. And so she's not in the studio, but she has her protege teaching classes in the studio. That was her student, just like the internship program.
She had some unpaid interns.
And now she's a paid teacher, and she teaches the students in her in the studio. And it's still running, and you can still rent it out for studio space if you want. That is rare that it happens, but bands, local bands want to come and have a space to perform and practice and stuff. So they hit me up for that. But yes, the music studio is still happening.
During this period, apparently there was at least something for a while called Puff, Pass, and Paint.
Oh, yes. I was teaching. It's like a wine and paint class. Mm-hmm. But with weed. And this was before I had my children. And
was weed even legal at this point, or was
yes, it was legal. Okay. So my shop shares a wall with the Fullerton Police Station.
Okay, good. Well, it's good that it was legal. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I would teach classes. I would teach art classes. So to preface this, back in 2013 or 14, I designed and created my own class to teach comic book creation as a form of trauma therapy, to use art and creative writing to deal with intense trauma for the California Orange County juvenile hall system. So I designed a program. I was talking with this guy who worked as a person in the juvenile hall in Orange County, and he loved comics and I love comics. And we got talking one day, and this light bulb went off that I was like, oh my God, this would be so great for these kids. And I went home and I literally wrote up a 12-week program of how we can teach art and comic creation and creative writing to utilize, see, my mom's a therapist.
Yeah.
And
Thanks,
I would
Mom.
have I would have been a therapist too, if I wasn't, deathly afraid of wanting to be anything like my mom. So I made this really awesome program, and I was teaching it at the juvenile hall, and it was really awesome and really powerful for me and for the kids. And then I got in like a minor dispute where I almost had to sue the California juvenile hall because they were trying to steal my program and use it in their facility without me teaching it or my permission, because I asked them to pay for colored pencils. So side note on that, they don't want to pay for anything. I was doing it all for free. I wasn't getting paid at all for my program. I didn't get paid for the design of it or anything, but then they wanted to steal it, and then I couldn't have that.
Yeah.
So what I did was I took it and mainstreamed it and instituted it with the Fullerton Unified School District. And so then I was teaching it elementary, middle school, and high school, where it was less about trauma and therapy and more about creating a good internal compass and utilizing comic books and creating superhero identity to help teach kids how to be the best versions of themselves. And so I was teaching probably from 2014 to 2018, I think, 2019. And I was teaching at all those different levels, and I was doing college workshops and stuff like that. And I just kind of put that on hold when everything else happened. I think I stopped doing that right after I got married in 2019. But
2019. Okay.
Yeah.
I want to definitely want to talk about post Kendall Glynnes in a little bit, but let's still in these Glynnes has absolutely nothing stopping her from taking over the world. Period. I want to talk about the philosophy that you had for social media, because it was in many ways incredibly forward, and I see lots of people who are getting tons of credit for it, doing the same thing now, right? And you were way ahead of them in so many ways of giving a sense of culture and a sense of place and a sense of mission, just by selling comics through social media. So can you talk a little bit about how you saw that, where that came from, and a little bit about the philosophy of that?
I think I don't get social media like other people get it, especially now, because it's like a whole different animal now. But I think that what I was trying to do, and what I'm constantly trying to do, is just have people feel like they're in the shop. So, when people come into the store, I would greet them just like I'm talking to you now, obviously very, very stoked. I'm just stoked on life. And I'm stoked on comics. I'm stoked on people coming in the store. So
Right.
I wanted to kind of get that into people's hands that didn't get to come into the store.
Right.
I have a lot of Crazy Larry energy. I don't know if you remember. You're from the East Coast, though, right? Or no. You're from LA, right?
Well,
I know your store was here, but
grew up in Texas, spent almost 20 years on the West Coast, and now I'm in New York. But I remember Crazy Larry. I know exactly what you're talking
just
about.
Like, yeah. I mean, even Rick and Morty, they do like the ants in my eyes guy. Yeah. I got a lot of that energy to bring. So Crazy Glynnes is a character that just kind of happened really organically. Bryce Rankins was the guy who was doing my videos at the time, and we just had a lot of fun. And COVID was really great time for that, of just like having fun with stuff, because
right.
There was nobody in the store, and like I couldn't do my normal job. So I'm just like, how do I get people excited?
Nothing is normal. You might as well experiment, right?
Yeah. And how do I get people excited? I'm like, well, the best way to get people excited is to just be excited, and I've got that in spades. So, so I think we just genuinely had a really good time, and had a lot of fun dancing and playing. And comics take themselves very seriously sometimes. And growing up, it was like comics is like for for a thing that's called funny books, people were really serious about it. Like, don't
Yes.
fuck around with these comics. This is insanely serious shit. This character died. Like,
Don't you
okay,
understand?
like, whoa, okay, guys. So I just needed to bring some levity to the industry that can be really gatekeepy and really mean. And like, we all love fucking dudes in tights. Like, what? Like, there's no reason to like harsh other people's vibes or yuck other people's yums. Like, we should all be here
Yeah.
for the same thing, and that is for fun and for love and for like for the idea of a hero, right? So for me, comics, like, I've done a lot of lectures and talks at different places where I'm talking about the idea and the iconography that comes behind like heroes and like the modern mythology of comic books, and like the reverence that we have for these characters. And there's so much of that that's really cool. There's so much symbolism and like archetypal stuff that's just awesome, that I love to like dig into the meat of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's like the 90% of the other stuff, which is just absolutely silly, just like over the top silly. So I really just, as much as my academic brain wants to dig in and like talk about comics as an art form and their value to society and all the great stuff that they do, and I really just want to be fun and be silly and let people know that this is an escape. This is escapism, right? This is any media is trying to uh, lift the crippling thumb of our capitalist patriarchal culture for like 5 seconds so we can all have a laugh and look at some boobs and be excited about life.
Yeah.
So I think that I just kind of wanted to embody that idea and bring that to people, that are having a hard day, just like I would do in real life. If you're having a hard day and your girlfriend dumped you, or your mom called you a mean name, or some boy at school said something nasty about you on the internet, you want to go to your comic book store and you want to escape with a comic, but you also want to be treated like a human and have someone say, hey man, you're looking down. Is everything all right? Or, hey, dude, good to see you. I like your haircut. Noticing stuff and like being genuine with people is like my entire business model, but it's also just who I am as a person. And I
Right.
think that this culture needs that a little bit more than some others. And I think that, by being genuine on social media, such a novel idea because it's so contrived. The entire thing is so contrived that, I just wanted to kind of be myself and be what I would be to people if they were to come in the store. And that's what I taught my dudes to do. They have that same, shtick. And the shtick is, we're silly and we're having fun and we're being ourselves. And it shouldn't be such a novel thing on social media because everything is so like nastily fake,
Yeah.
that it's refreshing for people to open up their phones and see Funky in a, Count Funkula outfit and like making vampire jokes about a comic book that people are going to be like, this is the shit. This is so good. And it's like horrifically violent. And, we can dress up the boys and put a fake mustache on a superhero outfit and have fun with
Excellent.
it.
All right, so I want to go. We're still in Glynnes's pre-Ken doll phase. Um, so you're running around. You're joining the groups in there in Fullerton. I also saw you get really active in kind of the comics culture of industry culture, let's say,
Yeah.
places like Comics Pro and the retailer meetings for the different distributors, and I saw you around there, and that's about the time I got to know you. And now that you're saying it, I'm realizing I fell into the trap of Glynnes looking for mentors. And
Yes.
yeah, okay, sure, kid, let's talk comics. So talk about that period, and like because you were so active for so long, and then being married and having kids and COVID all kind of came together for you at once, and so you kind of stepped away from that. Looking back on that period, what was that like for you, being this kind of young dynamo that was inspiring people, and
Well,
in a pretty stodgy group?
yeah, I feel like it's been a pretty smooth transition for me as far as being in the industry and like being a woman owned business in the industry, which is all boys,
Right.
because I was already in the boys club as a kid. And I spent most of my childhood either being, over sexualized at a young age for like being around grubby, nasty dudes for so long, and then like getting boobs.
How
God
dare you?
forbid. And so, part of my young self knew that, you know, as much as it is a difficult thing to get past, it can also be, why can't this be my superpower, right?
Right.
So, turning opposition into opportunity is kind of one of my favorite things to do. So being criticized, and man, I remember when I first opened my shop, some other shop owners who I will never name came into my store to like check it out, and to like get the vibe and like see what I was about, and just tried to talk so much shit. And like, there was so much of that in the industry when I started, because it was still new,
Right.
for a store to not be someone's wife, like for a store owner to not be someone's wife or to be someone's daughter. And that's why I have to make the distinction that my dad has never had a store, and that this is the comic book hideout is my thing that I started. Because there's a big difference between being a legacy store that has been around for forever that your dad owned, and starting something from scratch. I started the hideout with my own money. I sold everything that I owned that had any value, and I literally moved into the hideout. And I don't know if everybody knows this, but I lived in the hideout for 6 months. Slept under the bins. There was a little cot underneath. I built the bins. Me and my dad built the bins, right? And I built the
Yeah.
bins with a little cot bed underneath the indie section. So I slept in the hideout. I literally took everything I owned and put it into this space. And so there was no way that I was going to let any dude try to belittle me for what I was doing, because I was all in, you know? And so I utilized that as a jumping off point for me, right? And so being in the industry with a bunch of dudes that like to either over sexualize me immediately, or belittle me for having zero comic book knowledge, or for not knowing how to do anything because I'm a girl, which is wild because, like, newsflash, we're in 2024. Like, women have been doing awesome things for millions of years. I don't understand. But the patriarchy. Anyway. So the comic book
I mean,
industry.
and in retail, I mean, there have been figures who have been, women who have built solid comic shops. We in this show we've talked a lot about Cecilia. What is Cecilia? Cecilia's last name is Shore. Cecilia Shore, I think is her married name. But she started a shop in Houston that was wildly influential, and now has a shop in Dallas with her husband Jeremy. We have lots of really incredible women in our industry, both in the publishing side and in the retail side. But you're right in that they didn't step forward and say, "This is mine. I'm a part
Yeah.
of this culture too." Right, and
And
I
I
think
think
that was unique.
I
Right.
think that's one of the things, because it definitely felt like when I was doing it in the early days, it felt like I was the only one. And that's
Right.
probably not true, because there's awesome people all over,
Sure.
but I was the only one that was showing up. And maybe that was because everyone was too busy doing their shit, right?
Yeah.
Like we said, right?
That
All the
happens a
people that
lot.
are
Yeah.
actually doing it, right?
Yeah, they don't
But
get
I
a chance
really
to
made
talk
it.
about it online because they're too busy doing it. Yeah,
Exactly.
and
But
we've
I
talked to
really
some
made
of
it a
them here
point
too.
to
Yeah,
try to be there. Like you said, I wanted to be heard and seen and know that I was there. And so that was important to my brand, and to making sure that I felt like I was doing something for my sex in my position, right? Like, I want
yeah,
to let everybody know that I'm young, because that was another thing, being young, because
sure.
I'm young, I'm a girl, and I still know my shit, and I still have a really awesome store. And so, you know, it was really awesome getting to hang out with you and getting to meet, there's a couple other store owners that were really kind and really supportive of the Hideout early on, and kind of took me under their wing, and I could call them and be like, I didn't order enough of Amazing Spider-Man, the new one, and there's like everyone's going crazy for it, and I went to Frank & Sons and they're all out and I'm totally boned and I don't know what to do, and I'm getting pull customers faster than I can make my orders. Like I would order something and then 2 months later it would come out and I'd have 50 more people on pull for it, and I'd just be like, I need help. And so I could call a couple shops that I knew that they were gonna help me, and they were gonna be there, and they were gonna be like, okay. They would give me a text message and be like, hey, just so you know, this thing's coming up. It's going to be big. And I was like, oh, okay, good. Thanks. So, not everybody was a skis ball, but the amount of skis balls versus the amount of cool dudes like you were
Stop it.
far and few between. So it was, but it was also, I love a challenge. So anybody that wants to like challenge me, that's exciting for me, because then I can show up even more and then I can do it even better. I mean, this is not something that I think that I've told anybody in any other interview, but the reason I started the Hideout, the real reason, the real seed that started was I was dating a dude at the time. I was 25, right? I was madly in love with this guy. We broke up. We were trying to get back together. And I was like, hey, I have this idea, and I think I want to open up my own comic book store. And he was like, Glynnes, I haven't even ever seen you read a comic book. And I was like, bro, we've only been dating for 2 years. And also, what does that mean? And so he said, that's a terrible idea. You could never do that. And I was like,
girled you.
Oh, bitch, watch me. And then we did not get back together, and I opened up this Hideout, and it's been fucking fantastic for 12 years now. So
and he, because you occasionally check in on him, is having a miserable life, hates his life, hates everything that has happened. And I hope he's watching this interview. You know who you are, brother.
You know who you are. And I definitely got away and married someone really great.
A Kendall, who looks that good with his shirt off. All right, well, so I want to talk about COVID. So the specter of every conversation right now. I started this year, this podcast this year, and every conversation has COVID in it. We can't get away from it. Yeah. And you've talked a lot about this so far, and I don't want to go too deep into like what I do want to talk a little bit about. You said you set up some protocols and that sort of thing. I do want to talk about that. But first, I want to read you something that you wrote because I found it.
Memory lane time.
I know. All right. So, yeah, this is in April of 2020. We're all just beginning to get used to being stuck in our homes. And on I think your store's Facebook, maybe? I'm not sure. You wrote, what if the world comes out of this a better place, with people treating each other with more compassion and kindness? What if we keep the air cleaner? What if our leaders see what is truly necessary for people's needs? What if people understand more of what is important to them individually, acting more true to themselves? What if this time apart strengthens the bonds of our communities, grows friendship and family connections? What if, even after all the trials and tragedies, we grow as a people, as individuals, and as a global community, recognizing the cry for help from the earth? The proper use of a semicolon there, I want to call that out. What if this is the best thing that could happen, even if it's in a terrible package? Change is hard. Usually the best changes can be the hardest. But if we remember to lead ourselves with love, we can at least make one person smile every day. Looking back on that.
Oh, you go past Glynnes. Oh, that really, honestly, that speaks so, sorry, I'm hitting my mic. That That's honestly right. Speaks still so true to my heart. That's the real raw Glynnes coming at you with that, because I think that that still resonates with me. And I tried to hold true to my own words and take what I could to make the best out of that situation. And I know that there are some people that had great losses during that time, and that is, I don't want to disregard that, right? Because it's really important that we acknowledge the people that had it even harder than the average people. All of our people of color that weren't getting proper health care, all of our friends that are in more disenfranchised neighborhoods that didn't have access to tests and PPE and all the stuff that we needed, all the people that still had to go to work in environments that were unsafe. There's a lot of tragedy that happened because of this big thing. But just like I teach my students, right, teaching about heroes, what it means to be a hero is to make a decision that's from your highest self when the time is really needed, right? And the reason why everybody can be a superhero is by making those choices when the things that they need or the opposition is the hardest. And so for me, that was making people smile, right? Bringing a smile to somebody's face because I was acting a fool on Instagram, right? And that's something that's really little, but it can make a really big difference. And so it's important for me, as a person that gets, every once in a while, I'll get that like super doomy anxiety of like our whole society is at the bridge of complete collapse, which to an extent is true, but to another extent, I remember before I got married, sidetrack. Can you tell I have ADD? I remember before I got married, I was.
Okay, that was obvious when you were putting a recording studio in the comic shop. I don't think anybody is surprised by that diagnosis.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the hyperfocus that's really important, though.
That's right. Yes.
I remember being on my floor and just having a moment of crushing weight of like all of the world's sorrow. And at the time, this is probably like 2017 or something. And I just remember being so upset. I had like read something on the news. I used to train animals. I did like exotic animal training and management. I used to do a lot of conservation work. And I'd read something or looked at something, and it just was this awful news event. And I was crumpled like a paper napkin on the floor. And I was sobbing, and I was just crying about like all of the tragedy that's happening in the world and all of the things that I can't help and all of the people that I can't save and all of everything that's wrong. And I remember my husband, who was just my boyfriend at the time, John, came over to me and he put both his hands on me and he was like, Glynnes, you need to take a breath. Take a deep breath. And he says that sometimes now, and I get mad eyes and look at him like, oh, okay. But he was like, you need to take a deep breath, and you need to remember that just because you can't solve all of the problems doesn't mean that whatever you are doing doesn't make a difference. And that's something that I still need to kind of come back to all the time. It's like, just because I can't be Wonder Woman doesn't mean that the things and the gifts and the love that I give isn't, worth something. And that's something that is really hard for a person that's entrenched in superhero iconography all the time. It's hard to not have that want, that drive to like fix it and make it better. And COVID was so enormous that there was no one that could make it better. It wasn't going to get better until it naturally got better. And so that post was me trying to help do the same thing that John did to me, right? For everybody. Right. To come and to give someone a hug and to tell them to take a deep breath and to remind them that even something as little as giving someone a smile and getting someone to smile is significant and is important and is worthy. And that's that's stuff I want to teach my boys, right? That's my little tiny way of making the world a better place.
I would argue that, Wonder Woman is fiction, but I would argue that there is no true character there. There is no honest character there that doesn't occasionally crumple and need to be reminded to take a breath, and that you can do what you can do. So, yeah, I can see how that would be. Let's talk about how the pandemic permanently. I mean, obviously, during the pandemic, you and the Ken doll went and started building a family, and that has shifted your priorities some, right? And has taken you out. You talked a little bit about the protocols and rules and changes that you've made there. Can you talk about those? Because I think one of the going into this interview, I had no idea about the system that you've built of essentially having people absorb institutional knowledge, which I think is incredibly, incredibly smart. And I could see how other people would even make shifting, different places have different cultures, and I could see how they could shift that. But let's talk about how you've written that down now, right? Because I'm assuming that this is written down.
Yes. Yeah.
How do you think about that?
Well, it was probably 2014 when I was like in my real my real analytical going back to school phase, when I was teaching a lot, that I had created this program that I was working on, and I decided, okay, well, I can't just orate everything to my staff like the ancient native peoples. We need to write this shit down. So I created an employee handbook, right? And I used a template from another business that it has nothing to do with comic books, but I was like, I need a skeleton.
Gotta start somewhere.
Yeah. And then I created an employee handbook that has everybody's rules for everything. And I'm not the best disciplinarian kind of boss. That's not really how I work. Like, we have protocols as far as like write-ups and, things like that for disciplinary action. But typically I would rather sit down and have a conversation and say, hey, where were you coming from when this happened? Or what were you thinking about? So that we can kind of fix it from the inside, rather than slapping you on the wrist and saying, don't do that again. So I created the employee handbook as more like guidelines, stuff that we can go off of. And then I started creating systems for the structure of the store. So like, from having a comic book store, there's I like to call it the waterfall of book processing, right? So new books come in, they go on the wall, they go into pulls. You try to get as many of them sold as possible, and then they drip down to the next part of the waterfall, which is going to back issue. You got to bag and board them and price them and put them in their proper spot. And then if there's more than need to go to back issue, then they go to the sales bin, right? And you put them in for half off or whatever. And then they go from there to, the next place. And the waterfall effect on how we do our inventory keeps the waters churning, right? It keeps all of the fish in the stream fresh, if I'm going for the same metaphor.
Keep going.
So, so creating a system for that was really important, so that things didn't get stagnant and things didn't pile up, because there's nothing worse than coming in and being like, what the fuck are these? And why are they here? And why is this box here? And what is that over there? And nothing has labels, and it's all chaos. And for being a very organized person, which is one of the things I think my shop gets praised for a lot, that I always am like, yes, they get it, they see it, is how organized it is. Because, the daunting task of organizing, thousands and thousands of comic books is overwhelming. But if you get a good system in place that keeps it organized, and it's a maintenance system rather than reinventing the wheel, or dumping everything on the floor and having to sort it all out, then it keeps things really, it keeps the motor running, right? And the Hideout is a back issue store. So I pride myself on having a huge selection of back issues. And it's not a warehouse, I'm not Mile High or anything,
Right.
but I have a curated selection of back issues. So, everything that's in the bins is in the bins for a reason, and it's there because I think that there's people out there that want it, and it's alphabetical and numerical and has its own whole system. And so starting the store like that was a good way to do it. But then I just was buying collections like crazy, just like buying and buying and buying. And so I would have a massive inventory that needed to get sorted and processed. And it was really important to create a system of like, a flow chart of what you have to do with everything so that it wouldn't just get, left in a bin somewhere and then you go into the back storage room. We call the back storage room at the Hideout the dungeon.
Right. Where
And we have a
product goes
bunch
to
of
be tortured.
yes, we have a
Yeah.
bunch of creepy stuff hung up and a big skeleton and like, silly stuff in there.
Just
And
to keep the
so
metaphor going. Yeah.
yeah, and it's fun to do stuff like that. We've got the Harry Potter closet, we've got the dungeon, we've got the TARDIS. It keeps morale high. It keeps people excited when you say, "Go get that from the dungeon." It's just silly, fun stuff, right? That's a part of my whole deal. So writing those systems down wasn't very complicated because we were already doing them. So it was just putting them in a place that's at a big sign that says, "Don't know what to do with that? Here's what to do." And that kind of creates a leg up when you do a formal inventory. And I will tell you, Adam, this is not my proudest moment, but it took me 10 years to do a formal full store inventory.
Are you using a POS system to manage
So
inventory?
I've had a POS system always,
Oh, yeah. What
but
do you use?
a Talec. It's terrible.
Okay.
It's literally just to do its one job.
Okay.
But it does not house my inventory. So
Gotcha.
in the last year, I started selling on Hip Comics, and it's just a app and a site where you can sell comics. And the reason I had been avoiding it for forever. There's this guy that comes in and he's always, hey, have you signed up for Hip? Did you think about Hip? Have you looked at Hip? I'm like, how much are they paying you, man? Why do you keep telling me about this? I don't want to do that shit. I don't have time for that. I'm like, I don't got to pay my employees to make that happen. And then I looked into it, and the reason why, and this might be a great insider tool, the reason why I use it is because you can upload as many items as you want. Right now I have 30,000 comic books on Hip, over that. And you can add all of these items into your online store. And the best part about that is they give you an Excel file that has all of your items and all of what they are valued at market price right now, pictures of them, the whole deal. And so that in and of itself is the value for me. Like, yes, we sell things on Hip and we sell them daily. It's great, but that's not why they're on there. Truly.
Yeah.
Really, it's because now I have an actual legitimate inventory of all of my books, and it's easy to put it on there. So you can take your camera on your phone, scan it, it'll show you a picture of it, and then if it's already in the Hip system, you can just pull the info for it. So it makes inventorying books infinitely more easy because you can just, click. And the hardest part is like, when things are odd sizes or you have to change shipping. So right now I have all of my bins, all my back issue bins, all of my sets, all of my trades, all of my manga, all of my statues, all of that stuff is all on Hip. And the only thing left that I haven't put on there is current books that are on the wall, like unbagged and boarded, last 3-month books, and stuff that's in people's pulls. And then the dungeon, right? Which is my sales stock, my overstock, my dollar bins, and my to be processed stuff, which I have a great plan for. And I'm actually working on. I was just working on it earlier today, which is awesome. So I love it when life gives you boons, where you're just like, man, I really wish I knew what to do with all of this shit. and then you just like someone calls you and like, hey, do you have a bunch of stuff you need to get rid of? Like, yes, I do.
Well, yes. Every store owner I know has that, and they call that
Yes.
the retirement plan. It's the garage full of shit that they're going to sell whenever they finally, close the store.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure, sure.
yeah.
Yes, yeah, yeah, because that's the stuff that you don't have. Like the stuff that's worth money, you don't have that on the floor. No, 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 no. Money on the floor. Money where people could buy it. Stuff that's
Absolutely.
not money, that's the shit that you have sitting around. But so I'm on HIP, so I have this great inventory system, and it took my staff really like a year to do it because they're doing their normal job plus doing this job. But I'm really proud of them, and it's cost me a lot in labor, but now I have it all there, and that's something that I've wanted since I opened my store, and I just I couldn't find a system that worked for me that was good enough for me to invest the time and money into it. Sure. And so now I have, and I'm feeling really positive about it. And now if I wanted to create new revenue streams, I could take that Excel file and put it into a Shopify store or a store on my website or a store, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
You can kind of plug and chug it. And they take everything that's on my eBay store and put it on the HIP store. So it makes it really easy for accessibility, which can be crazy when you have, 100,000 comics to deal with.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, that's excellent. That answer your question? I didn't.
It does.
I feel like I might have looped around on something else.
Do you think the hideout could scale? Have you thought about that? I mean, I'm sure you've thought about that, and you're now in a different phase. But at some point, these kids are going to go to school. At some point, Glynnes is going to come into a new phase. Is there? Although who knows? You and the Ken doll maybe just building an army. I'm all for it. I think you're both adorable. You should have a whole adorable army. But
people keep saying that, and I keep saying 2 is great.
Two is a great army.
2 is a great number. As a child of 6, 2 is really, stop while you're ahead. My husband is the only child, and so the fact that we have more than one is already winning. So
gotcha.
Well, I think that there was a time when I was thinking about opening up a second store. Sure. And the hideout was doing excellent, and we were really I was involved in so much stuff that I was like, I could do this. And as soon as it came out of my mouth of like, I can do that, but not everything you can do, you should do. And so I really wanted to focus on doing the best that I can do at one thing rather than doing a little bit of everything kind of well.
Yeah.
And so as much as I wanted to have the opportunity of doing something new and different and growing, I thought, why not pivot and grow inside the store, right? Why not change and develop and do things better inside the store rather than trying to reinvent something new? And I think that even though I have all the tools and I know all the things now, I have all this knowledge, right, of knowing how to do it if I want to do it. I think that realistically, the hideout is so special, and I put so much love and magic and myself into it that I don't want to take any of that away from it. I would rather it grow and it blossom into something big and beautiful in its own self than, go make another one. Right. So the hideout's my first baby, and having real human babies after that just made me recognize and love it even more for what it is. And, there was a huge phase of my life. That was a decade, that was 1/3 of my life that I spent and have been spending creating, developing, and manifesting this store. And so I think that realistically, that phase is done. But that doesn't mean that the hideout is done, right? Sure. So even though I can go and, kind of come into a new phase and do something else, that doesn't take any of the integrity away from the hideout, because it is rock solid, because I've fortified it to a way that it, if it can last through the pandemic, and, we'll see what happens in November, but if it can do that, then I think that it's sticking around for a while.
Oh, right. Um, okay. A couple different directions we can go here, and I'm trying to decide. Yeah, let's go this direction. Okay. About the same time that you wrote the last thing that I read you, you also wrote in a different interview, quote, "Print media is on its way out, and we know it." Now, this was inside of a larger interview, and you were talking about digital, and digital has had its, it has its own issues, but it's also had its own successes. But how do you 4 years in, almost exactly 4 years later? No, I guess I'm not close to it. A little more. Shut up, Adam. How do you feeling about that?
Well, I think that it's not as much that print media is dying. I'm a very avid book reader. If I turned you around right now, you would see my bookshelves. This is all bookshelves behind me,
Sure.
for real books, in addition to comic books.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that there's never going to be something that takes away the tangible love of reading, right? The physical love of reading a book. Nothing's ever going to change that, right? Because people that are readers because they like the whole process of reading, right? They
Right.
like engaging their mind and engaging their imagination, but they like the tangible touch and feel of opening a book or carefully not to crease a comic book cover, right? I think that that is part of the ritual that is comic book reading. And so I don't think that printed comic books are ever going to go away. But I think that the environment is changing, but it's always changing. It's been changing. It's changed since we've started this conversation. So um, the big thing 4 years ago was, oh my God, digital comics are going to wreck the comic book industry and it's
Sure.
all going to be over and we're all going to lose our jobs because no one's going to want to read comics. And the reality is, like, I fucking hate reading shit on my phone. I hate it. I honestly, if I could not touch my phone as much as possible, that's what I
Yeah.
do. Like, people get mad because I take a long time to reply to stuff. It's because I don't want to fucking touch my phone. So I have to use it all the time to do my work and to live in 2024. But I think that there is a big difference between people that like to read on a tablet or on their computer or on their phone and people that like to read physical comics. And I'm definitely banking on the physical people because I have a physical store. And I think it's more likely that media is going to change as a whole, right? Because movie industry is totally changing. And, since the strikes and since, AI has really been blowing up, I think that everything is going to evolve. I think that, just as everything's always evolving, like, how can it not? Um, I think that we're not in a deficit of comic books. It's not going to, they're not going to pull the rug out from underneath us. And that was a concern when Disney bought Marvel. Everyone was like, oh no, what's going to happen? They're going to ruin all our fun. And it's like, no, they're just going to fund it. They're just going to give you
Yeah.
so much money. And I mean, I
Yeah.
recently saw the Deadpool movie, which is wild because I never get to see things like when they come out. I'm always like a month or so behind. But my gracious Ken doll let me go out with my brother last night, and to go to the movies after I put the babies down.
Aw.
And it's great because it's totally cheeky and poking fun at all the things that everybody loves, right?
Absolutely.
Which is wonderful. And I love the irreverence and, breaking the third and fourth wall and, like, poking fun at all that stuff. But it's gonna be a whole new era, right? It's gonna be a whole new
Truly.
deal.
Very
Um,
truly. Truly.
and I
Truly.
think that everybody's just gonna roll with it, and we're all gonna pivot and find our place no matter what happens. Because, like I said a million times, um, the hideout is about community, and the need for community is only going to strengthen and greaten. It's only going to be greater needed as things get worse politically and economically and, as a society as a whole. So I think that, by creating a space that's not just there for the purpose of selling comic books, there's a lot more longevity, because it's a place that people need to come to feel taken care of, to feel at home, to feel loved. And that's never, ever, ever going to go away. It's only going to be needed more.
Here, here. I mean, I think my personal pet theory, and I agree with you, obviously, is that comic shops just in general have that place in people's lives.
Yeah.
They are a place where we come together. The reason they still work is that we need that. We need that place to kind of be amongst ourselves, right?
Yeah. And I joke often that I've always been a comic book bartender.
Oh yeah.
So
oh yeah.
People need that place where everybody knows your name, and you can come in and people can ask you about your kids or your wife or your mom or whoever is important to you, and about you, and making sure that you are feeling like a person.
Yeah, exactly. All right. You're now long in the tooth as a retailer. You've been at this for a minute. You've seen things come and go. I assume that this need for mentors is lessened, which obviously you've also built in this sort of pipeline of people that you can mentor. How do you, Matt? I mean, putting yourself in a position of talking to 25-year-old Glynnes. What do you tell her? What are the things that she needs to know? How have things shifted since then? And what are the things that she needs to avoid?
Oh man. I think that for the sake of the knowledge that I have now, telling 25-year-old Glynnes anything more than it's all going to work out great would probably be problematic, right? Because she needs to learn all of that shit. She needs to go through all of the really tough times, and she needs to cry in her car a little bit, because that's what helps to get the creative juices flowing and get her out of sticky situations. So I think that if I knew when I was 25 that the shop was going to be as successful as it is now, that I was going to meet some of the most important people in my life, including my husband, that I was going to create something that really made a difference in people's lives and stood up for something that I thought was important in the industry, I think that she would be like, well, duh. She's like, what do you think I've been manifesting, bitch? So I think we'd really just like hug and high five.
Yeah.
You did it.
All right, then let's tackle this a different way. Systemically, think about what you're dealing with now as a comics retailer, and the people that you're working with, and think through like what if you're leaving the culture that you're going into, the environment that you're going into as a retailer now is much different than it was back in 2012.
Yes. I think the most important thing.
Yeah. What would you do if you? Grant you a magic wand. You can wave it and make it easier for the Glynneses of the world to stand up and create their own environments. What do you change?
Boundaries. Having really clear and heartfelt boundaries, and that's for everyone, right? That is for other industry professionals. That is for my staff. It took me. There were some really hard lessons about having my staff. We create this family dynamic, but the only way that works is because I have really strong boundaries. Boundaries as an employer, boundaries as a friend, and as a professional. It's really important to, as a person that's very empathetic and very, sometimes my heart is bigger than my head. And so I think by telling my younger self, know your worth and have boundaries, because a lot of times for women, and I speak from my personal experience, a lot of times for women, it's really hard to know your, like, having confidence is not the same as having and knowing your worth, right? Because it's easy to have confidence or feign having confidence, but it's really hard to actually know and value yourself in the way that is due. Especially, I mean, for me, it was really hard to understand that yes, it's cool to take challenges and to turn them around. And yes, being positive is my superpower. But really knowing that what I was doing is important, and that other people can't take anything like that away from me was really hard. And so struggling with creating that affirmation of self worth and worthiness of what I was doing. Like, yes, this is my story. Yes, I did build this. Um, and then creating really good boundaries as a business owner, like, you know, not letting people sleep in your, not letting employees sleep in your store, not, paying
You
for
hypocrite.
people's rent because they can't, you know what I mean? Like, so it, there's helping people and loving people and creating a great environment. And then there's being taken advantage of, spreading yourself too thin, and creating situations where people don't understand, where the line is. And so I think
Yeah.
that by creating good boundaries as a professional and creating I had to create a whole persona for myself as like, this is Glynnes, but this is business Glynnes. And
Yeah.
business Glynnes has to have rules and be strict and learn to say no, and make sure that if people are presenting oppositions, that I can meet them in a way that is strong in knowing my worth and understanding that I can say, no, fuck that. That's absolutely unacceptable. And here's why. And then being able to figure out, where to go from there. Because I think that that's a really difficult thing for any young woman to do, right? So part of this is like just me growing up as a human, as a woman, and then also growing up as a professional and understanding like what that means.
I think that's, I mean, even as a man growing up I grew up, I think I went from boy to man being a retailer, and then growing into, even growing as, I feel like in many ways I started over as a publisher. I see how people get themselves in trouble by not seeing where those boundaries are and understanding where those boundaries are and how to define them. I can see that over and over and over again. So I think that's an incredibly insightful piece. Um, all right. So I think we're going to start wrapping this up because you are a busy person. How has being a retailer, how do you think it has affected? I mean, you've only been at it for a couple of years now, but how do you think it's affected you being as a mom?
Oh, I think I think that I got a lot of good practice in caring for and mothering my employees when I didn't have strong boundaries. And now realizing that I can have an employee relationship where I can be a mentor and I can be a leader and I can be someone that cares and loves and takes good care of my employees, but I don't have to be their mommies. Um, and that was some lessons that I've learned. And I think that that helps me to understand problem solving and coming up with creative solutions to things. And I also think that, the Hideout gave me my teaching opportunities, which was really, really cool. And so I learned a lot in working with kids and teaching my classes. And um, that whole character building structure that I taught in my classes is not something that is just for fluff. That's like real life stuff that I live by and that I want to teach my kids. And, comic books are fun and silly and dumb, but they're also really meaningful, and they really have these nuggets of truth that are so important to creating good humans, right? To creating good heroes and to giving people their autonomy and their own personal power. And so I think that the things that I've learned from the Hideout in my personal growth have helped me to be the best version of myself, but they also have given me the tools that I can use in helping my children to do that as well. Hopefully.
We're getting close again. Speaking of motherhood, is there anything else you wanted to say about your mom? Because I want to give her as much time on this as possible. I want this to be like when she looks back on all the interviews that Glynnes has done, I want this to be her favorite. Because we actually had one of our previous guests. I heard that when this is Jeff Figley of a comics place told me that this was his mom's favorite interview of all time.
Wonderful.
So I know. I feel now I'm playing to the mom demographic. Tell me about yes, mom.
So I would not be the woman that I am now if I did not have my mother's strong feminist influence. So my mom, I had two wildly different home environments as far as what media was ingested, right?
Sure.
With my dad, I had an evil step monster, and that's a whole nother thing. But I was constantly surrounded by comic book iconography and images of busty women, and like he had a poster of Dawn in like lacy lingerie on the back of his door. Like the imagery that I saw with my dad was all super patriarchal, sexist femininity. Right. And like faux power, like power girl, like, oh, she's so powerful and her boobs are so big, like very, very much the world that we live in a little bit, in the comic book industry, because you can't avoid it. And then on the other hand, at my mom's house, we used to see her just on the weekends, and she didn't want me playing with Barbie dolls unless they were astronaut Barbie, fighter pilot Barbie, veterinarian Barbie. So my mom was very much a feminist in the 90s, when being a feminist was like fighting words, and she really pushed that I was capable, and then I am capable, and then I can do anything that I want to do. She also told me that she wouldn't love me until my third degree, but she was really
still waiting on that one.
I got 2 bachelors, so
okay.
But I was like, I'm not getting any more degrees, Mom. She really pushed the idea that, my mom definitely pushed me to, smash the patriarchy. So I got that.
I can see that. Anything else you would our audience at this point is in the dozens. Anything else you'd love to say to the comics industry in general, and the people who it seems that our entire audience is retailers and people who work in publishing. So is there anything you would like to say but that we haven't covered?
Thank you so much for everybody doing exactly what they're doing. If you're a retailer, if you have another store, thank you so much for creating an environment for people to feel safe and to support something that is really magical and special. Like, we are a small industry, but we are so cool. And there's so many awesome, like weird, crazy individuals. And just thank you for letting me be a part of it. And thank you, Adam, for believing in me way back when and encouraging me. I appreciate that so much. And I'm really happy to be here. And I think that the last decade has been immensely fun.
Well, I can't wait to see what you do with the decade after these kids go to school. I'm sure it's going to be, I'm sure either Fullerton or comics or some other thing, an interest of yours, will never know what hit them. Where can people hear and see about the hideout? And if you are ever awkwardly on the internet, where can they see and hear from you?
You guys can find us at Comic Book Hideout on everything. So we're on Instagram at Comic Book Hideout. We have a website, comicbookhideout.com. We very rarely use Facebook anymore. It's we kind of phased that out, and Twitter. I think that you can see our videos on TikTok at Comic Book Hideout. I am never, I mean, I try very hard to not be on Instagram or social media now that I have a team that does that for me. But I'll show up in some videos on the Instagram soon. You can also hear our podcast called Pre-Order Power Hour. That is mostly the boys, but I'm on there as well. And we put that out on Spotify and on wherever you get your podcasts. It's going to be Pre-Order Power Hour. And you can also search Comic Book Hideout. So
incredible. Kid, I'm so proud of what you've done for whatever little mentoring I was able to do, and I'm so thrilled to see what happens next. So thank you so much for being on this.
Thanks.
Awesome.
And hopefully we'll see each other sooner rather than later.
I would like that a lot. All right. Namaste, y'all.
Bye, babes.
All right. Hi again. Thanks so much for watching Comic Industry Insiders. It, as always, is our pleasure to talk to the movers and shakers of comics and to bring you those conversations. We'd love it if you'd support us with a like and subscribe. And, telling your friends is always good. But really what we'd want to do is hear from you. Any questions, any suggestions you have about our show, any suggested guests, frankly, anything at all, we'd love to hear from you. Our producer is nearly always Stephanie Gerk, and our researcher is Anthony Militano, who makes me look much smarter than I am. All right, guys. Thanks so much. Namaste, y'all.